Pour yourself a cold one.
Let's strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years, bunch of podcasts. Already did the Ross Tucker Football Podcast this week, number 2. Sunday night was my thoughts on every team's draft. Today was Greg Cosell discussing some of the more interesting decisions in the first round on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. We'll do Even Money later today. We'll do Fantasy Feast later today. A lot of fallout from the 2022 NFL Draft. But this is the College Football Show, the College Football Betting Show, the NFL Draft Show that you get all in one. Please check us out, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. If you can check us out on social media, that's awesome. Really appreciate those of you that follow at Ross Tucker NFL, Twitter, Instagram. I got a TikTok now. I do the TikTok thing if you're a TikTok person, or of course, Facebook.com/Ross Tucker NFL. The star of this show, frankly, the star of the NFL draft is my guy, Emory Hunt, whose alma mater, by the way, had like 5 dudes more drafted than Texas did. I don't even know how many guys you had, Emory. Check him out at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube, footballgameplan.com/2022 draft guide. Listen, you can still get it. Like, you want to know more about the undrafted rookie free agents on your team or around the NFL now that you know what team they landed with? Emory's got them all. It really is not too late to buy the draft guide, because you know what's not anymore? It shouldn't even be called a draft guide. Now it's a training camp guide. It's a training camp roster preview guide is what it is. So footballgameplan.com/2022 draft guide. Emory, what's up, man?
What's up, Ross, man? Listen, they better not let me get into this tycoon money, because we're gonna dominate the first round. Don't let me become a multi-millionaire billionaire, because it's a wrap for college football.
Hey, you know what? I'm glad you said that. And I didn't mention that on today's Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Maybe I will later in the week, but I want to discuss it with you now. And that is the NIL and the impact it's having on college football. So for those of you that don't pay attention, Jordan Addison, who won the Biletnikoff Award for Pitt, not Garrett Wilson, not Chris Olave, not Drake London, not Jahan Dotson, not Treylon Burks, not Jamison Williams. Jordan Addison won the award as the best receiver in college football. The last day you could go in the transfer portal, he puts his name in the transfer portal. There's a lot of rumors out there, Emory, that he might be going to USC and might be getting a boatload of cash to do it, which a lot of people still don't even realize, Emory, it's legal. Like, NIL is legal. It's not supposed to be an enticement to attend a specific institution. We all knew this was going to happen. We all knew this is how it was going to end up playing out. And now people are pushing back saying, no, it's not NIL, and no, he might not necessarily go to USC. Let me just predict right now on this show how the story ends. He goes to USC, and he gets a lot of money.
Listen, Ross, and everybody had their takes flying this weekend, and, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, everybody's saying their opinion. But I'm like, listen, first of all, you can't blame the kids. You got to blame the NCAA. And I use this analogy on one of the radio shows I was on, Sirius XM, and I said it's kind of like when Obamacare first came out. It was the foundation, and everyone was trying to figure out how to, you know, but you have now you have guardrails to work with, or a foundation to work with, and you build on top of that. I think this is the same thing, because it's new. There's no real direction on how to manage it. NCAA should have managed this 20 years ago, and now they still have an opportunity to put in place some things to help navigate through this. But right now, while it's still open, go for it, young man. And that's why I put the tweet out yesterday. Like, listen, everybody's complaining and upset, But if I'm Tennessee State, Oprah, how bad you want to win? Let's go. If I'm Bowling Green, David Letterman, I know that late show money still thriving. Let's go. Let's compete. Like if you got a rich alum, let's go get it. You know, that's how you're supposed to look at this. Louisiana, don't come at me. I'm not rich yet. But I know Allie Landry got some of that supermodel money. Let's go. Let's compete. Let's get in the first round. That's how you're supposed to handle this, Ross. And don't let everybody's complaining again, but don't let the Ivy League decide to partake in the festivities with some of that equity money. Game over. It's a wrap. So, man, let's make this fun.
Oh, man, dude. I'm going to use that quote on Twitter at some point and just say, it's all fun and games till the Ivy League gets involved in NIL. Then you're all done. Then you're all done. It's over.
Game
You ever
over.
heard of Jeff Bezos?
Exactly. Right. Game over. Even Columbia got Lauren Hill. Let's go.
Robert Kraft? Dude, I mean, they in all sincerity, they all have a million, like, crazy rich billionaire. It's crazy. That is don't let the Ivy League. It's really funny though. It's funny you say that, okay? Because I'm gonna have lunch tomorrow with an FCS coach who's recruiting the area. You know what I was thinking? Dude, you could dominate FCS quick. Real quick. You know, if you're the only one of like the FCS, like MAC and below, like an FCS, you're the only one giving out NIL deals, and you get the best of all those kids, Emory. I mean, you could do some damage.
That's the part people are not understanding, man. Like, listen, don't focus on him going to USC. If you're UCLA, you're like, wait a minute. What are we doing? You have to compete. If you're Texas, you have to compete. Yeah, you did a great job bringing Quinn Ewers back to Texas. But, man, if you have, again, Bowling Green has David Letterman. Why are you not dominating the MAC right now? Make it happen.
Well, the rich people have to care. You know, they have to care enough to give the money. But that's funny, man. Really funny. So before I forget, how many people did Louisiana get drafted?
We got 2. So that was huge. We kicked off the 4th round with Max Mitchell, then Percy Butler went. And we have a bunch of guys signing undrafted rookie free agent deals. I know Farrah Gardner signed somewhere. I know Levi Lewis signed with Seattle. Taylor Humphrey signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's been a fun draft cycle. Chauncey Manac signed with the Green Bay Packers. So I'm excited to see how these guys end up, competing in training camp and preseason. But to get 2 guys drafted, that was huge, man. And it would have been more if a lot of guys didn't leave to go to Florida, because we had a pipeline going. But hey, I can respect them guys following their coach that recruited them. But fun time to be a Raging Cajun.
2 more than the Texas Longhorns had, by the way. I don't know if you saw my tweet, Emory. The Cincinnati Bearcats had 9 guys get drafted. They had 5 in the top 100, like 7 in the top 150. The Texas Longhorns had 0. Like, think about that for a second, okay? Texas is Texas. In the state school in the state of Texas, like the Longhorns. Cincinnati is group of 5, and they're the second school in Ohio, right? Like, it's Ohio State. We all know that, right? They don't get anybody to go to Cincinnati that wants to go to Ohio State. Nobody. They don't get any recruits like that. So you want to talk about evaluation and development. It is unreal what Luke Fickell and his staff have done. And I respect that he hasn't found an opportunity that he likes more, or that the right one hasn't come along. But you got to be kidding me, Emory, with this guy. 9 guys drafted from the Cincinnati Bearcats?
And you brought up that it's Ohio State is Ohio, right? And this is the other caveat that people don't really realize. Cincinnati is also a major metropolitan city. We know how hard it is to have consistent success at a major metropolitan school. Not only did they have more guys drafted than Texas, they also had more guys drafted than the University of Miami. So again, and when you're able to have that level of success at a major metropolitan city, it is so hard to keep those city guys in the city. Think about UCLA, USC, Miami, Maryland, Tulane. All these schools in metro areas struggle to recruit because everybody wants to leave. And so to have that success in that, metro city is even more remarkable than what he's been able to do.
All right. So I don't do this very often. Before I forget, by the way, Mother's Day is literally Sunday. If you haven't already, myfrontpagestory.com, trust me, it's by far the best Mother's Day gift you can ever give someone. She will cry like good tears, and she will have it hanging up in her house for the rest of time. So for you, it'll be the gift that keeps on giving because it's just hanging up in her house forever. Myfrontpagestory.com. All right. So I don't often do this with you, Emory, but I want to give you a total blank canvas. Like your biggest thoughts, your biggest takeaway from the 2022 NFL draft.
I-95 rules the day. You start on I-95, you look at what the Jets and Giants did, drive a little bit down, maybe 90 minutes or so, depending on how fast you go. Philly did a fantastic job. Another 90 minutes from there. Baltimore continued to ace it. They did a fantastic job as well. Those teams on I-95 did a fantastic job, in my opinion, in how they were able to acquire talent. Like we joked before last year, Baltimore and Pittsburgh send their picks in before the draft. And wherever the draft goes, they already have those guys, right? And even if you want to go 80 West, Pittsburgh, outside of Kenny Pickett, right? That was a question I had, and I'll tell you that in a second. But Pickens, I mean, you let Pickens go to the Steelers with Claypool, and they got Calvin Austin too. Like
that, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to do it, just so everybody knows, we're going to do a division series where we're going to look at the picks basically one by one and the undrafted guys for every team and every division. So you're going to know everything you need to know about your team's new guys, but also the other teams in your division. But I do think that Pittsburgh needs to be discussed for two reasons. That says something to me about Claypool and Deontay Johnson that, like, the Steelers, I believe, think those guys are going to want to get paid, and they don't want to pay them. That's my read on it, that they're seeing what's going on with the wide receiver market, and they like Claypool, and they like Deontay Johnson. They don't like him enough to give him that kind of money, so they're going to get the next guys in the pipeline.
And you think about two, let's say, quote unquote, issues with both. First of all, it was kind of ironic they had Claypool announce the Pickens pick, right?
Amazing. That was amazing.
So you got Claypool, who's a bit inconsistent, and you have Deontay Johnson, who has issues with drops. So you get guys that are very similar. You get a big guy that can catch the heck out of football consistently in Pickens. You also get a speedy guy that can win one-on-one and didn't have issues with drops in Austin. So I feel like they're trying to, like you said, backfill that position, but with two really good players. But the Pickett thing was something that was interesting because, and it's not against Pickett the player. It was basically what the Steelers said about Pickett that had me just scratching my head. It was, we're looking for someone that played a lot of games. We're looking for someone that started a lot of games, that that had a lot of success, has a high floor, has athleticism to make all the throws and also to get outside the pocket. I'm like, all right, cool. That sounds like Desmond Ridder, who's also younger, more athletic, more productivity over the course of his career, not just a 1-year splash, has bigger hands. So, and he didn't have an issue with turnovers like Pickett did in his career at Pitt. Why wouldn't that be the pick as opposed to Pickett? So it makes me believe that it came down to probably Pickett versus Ridder as opposed to Pickett versus Willis, how everyone, including myself, probably thought. But then you draft a quarterback in round 7. I know people will say, oh, well, they didn't want to try to fight for him as an undrafted rookie free agent and Chris Oladokun. But when you look at my grade for Oladokin and my grade for Pickett, they have the same grade. So now you have Oladokin, Pickett, Trubisky. All guys have similar skill sets, which is what you want in your quarterback depth chart. But who's better than who? And so if it's a true competition, like what Pete Carroll did with Russell Wilson and Matt Flynn, if Trubisky comes out as the better quarterback, do you start him over your first round pick? If Oladokin comes out better than your first round pick, do you start Oladokin, the seventh rounder? If Pickett comes out better than both, do you run with Pickett after what you told Trubisky? So that quarterback battle will be fascinating to watch all summer long.
So I want to throw a couple things at you. One is I have several buddies because of where I live that are Steelers fans. And it's interesting. If you're a Pitt fan and a Steelers fan, you're over the moon because you love Kenny Pickett. You love what Kenny Pickett did this year. He took Pitt to the ACC championship. You know, they won it. They hadn't done that in forever. Like they love that guy and they're thrilled the Steelers got him. But if you're a Steelers fan and you're not a Pitt fan, you know, the names I'm hearing are like Andy Dalton is what they think. And by the way, Andy Dalton took the Bengals to the playoffs a million times and was a good player. But, you know, Steelers fans, it's really Super Bowl or nothing for them, right? They have 6 of them. They want more. Like, they don't care. Like, they're used to being in the playoffs. They're used to being in the mix. They want someone that can get them over the top. And I guess they feel like Pickett's going to be good enough for them to be good so that the Rooneys are so loyal that they don't move on from him, but never good enough to actually beat, you know, Mahomes and Josh Allen and these guys and Russell Wilson, these guys in the playoffs. What do you think about that?
It's a fantastic point and observation by those fans. Probably one of the smarter fan bases in the NFL. And think about it. In the division, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow. Do we ever see Pittsburgh competing with those quarterbacks who are in the top 10? You know, Watson obviously didn't play this year, but when he's playing, he's a top 10 quarterback. There's 3 top 10 quarterbacks in one division. So and again, you can win in a multitude of ways. Steelers got a great football team, which is huge. That's, you know, they make the 52 better so the 53rd guy doesn't have to carry the weight of everything, right? So in this situation, this scenario, Pickett is the 53rd guy. So if you have a, you know, Najee Harris or Pat Fryermuth, you have Pickens and Austin and Johnson and Claypool, you're retooling the offensive line. Your defense is excellent. Pickett just has to be the bus driver, which is great. As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, this team should be competitive. And a bounce here or there, you can win. So to your point, yes, they can get into the playoffs. We can see a situation where 4 teams get into the playoffs out this division, right? But if it comes down to which quarterback do you trust to make the play, there are 3 quarterbacks in that division that you trust over the entire Steelers depth chart. It's crazy to see how that division stacks up, but it's going to be fascinating to watch the battle for the quarterback position because you can't definitively say that Pickett is better than Trubisky, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
What else jumped out to you about the draft in general? Anything else, maybe in particular the first round, but anything else that really stood out to you?
It stood out to me. First, we got 4 HBCU players drafted, which was, I thought we were going to flirt with I tweeted out, I settled in on 4, but throughout the whole process, I said somewhere between 2 to 10. But 4 seemed like the more realistic number. I thought we were probably going to flirt with 6. I was surprised Marquise Bell didn't get drafted out of Florida A&M. I thought he would have gotten picked up. I thought Aquil Glass, a quarterback, would have gotten picked up, you know, probably in that spot where Mr. Irrelevant went with Brock Purdy. But to have 4 after not having none is a step in the right direction. And we've seen, you know, 20 have already signed undrafted rookie free agent deals. So it just goes to show you that this year's crop of HBCU prospects were very good over last year. And then, again, 2019, we had a first round pick in Titus Howard out of Alabama State. So if the talent suggests that you get drafted, the league will draft you. And so it was a good year for them. And I've said this before on so many different shows that I've been on this week that have asked me the same question. Like they always ask like who disappointed you? Which ones, who lost the draft? And I'm like, to be completely honest, ever since starting with the pandemic draft of 2020, when less was more, when everyone just had to sit home and just kind of like scout the tape and draft. Since then, from that point to where we are now, I watched the draft in its entirety, and I'm just like, wow, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. That makes sense. I feel like we have now bypassed the what the hell are they thinking type selections in the draft where everyone's like, well, damn, that this team actually drafted. You can look at everyone's draft and be like, I see fits all across the board. Like teams are really now figuring out the draft, here in from 2020 on. I feel like no one is getting terrible drafts because they've all just kind of like recalibrated and focused on the tape.
Speaking of recalibrating, this week new customers can bet just $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do at DraftKings Sportsbook. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. How about that? Promo code Ross. You bet $5 on any NBA team. Might want to wait till Embiid's back if he is, and to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. That's promo code Ross only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. All right. So this is something I thought was interesting from Fran Duffy, who used to be the co-host of this show. I did the draft with him for the Eagles. The three deepest spots in this NFL draft, Emory, I don't know if you saw Fran's tweet. Cornerback, tight end, and O-line. The average tight ends picked the last 5 years, 13.8. Last 10 years, 13.8. This year, 19. 19. So I always wonder with stats like this, was there just a deeper crop of tight ends, or are more teams needing them or looking for them?
I think it was a deeper crop of tight ends because I remember we talked about this leading up to the draft. Me going to the NFLPA game out in Pasadena, saying like, "Wow, these tight ends are really good," you know. And everyone was talking about the Senior Bowl tight ends. Then I get to the Shrine game, I'm like, "Damn, these tight ends are really good," you know. And then you get to the Senior Bowl, and you see that crop of tight ends there. So I'm not surprised. So you figure you average 5 tight ends at All-Star game. I feel like all those tight ends got drafted, and some signed undrafted rookie free agent contract. So I'm not surprised to see that number be what it was because this was a very deep class. Last year we were only talking about Kyle Pitts, and it was a struggle for me. You know how deep I dive into the prospects. It was a legit struggle for me to find, double-digit tight end prospects for a flex position. And that's usually the easiest ones to find because those are, your bigger wide receivers that are not as fast that is going to end up being tight end. I only found like 7, I believe, last year. And this year, I want to say I had like 20 something at each position. So it was a deeper crop of talent because a lot of guys went back to school. So I'm excited for it. I get it. I was shocked that the the running back position, um, not having an influx of guys in round 2 or round 3. Maybe it's some teams don't need backs, but I mean, I thought it was a steal for the Chargers to get Isaiah Spiller when they did. I think he's their starter because Austin Eckler has been calling for that. He wants to get back to that complementary role because he was getting worn down being the guy. And so Spiller is perfect for what they do. They got him in round 3, I believe. And the Jets getting Brees Hall, pairing up with a guy I really liked in Michael Carter. That's a potent 1-2 punch. So I just thought there would be more backs taken in the draft than what we saw. Not necessarily first round, but just more backs in the subsequent rounds. And we didn't really see that.
The other 2 spots that had a lot of guys taken, O-line 49, usually averages 41 or 42. Cornerback 39, usually averages around 31. I guess the question is, Is that something to do with this year, or are teams just realizing those are positions where you need a lot of guys? Like you need a lot of O-linemen and you need a lot of corners.
Exactly. And that's the key. You also need a lot of wide receivers too. And I think because of what we're seeing from college football, it's trickling up in terms of the amount of 4 or 5 receiver sets that we're seeing, and more amount of 4 DBs, 5 DBs out there on the field. Everything is just going to trickle up. So you're going to have more guys with time on task at the collegiate level that's going to be ready to go in the NFL. And as we talk about throughout the season, how many hamstring pulls or quad pulls we see from these DBs, and we talk about the offensive line depth. I mean, the Jets showed you by how quickly it can go from sugar to what when your starters go. And so that's why they built their depth up this draft. The Giants did the same thing too. Just they got Evan Neal, they got those 2 guards, Izudu and also McKeithen from North Carolina. That was my 4 and 5 guards. They got both of them to already go with Shane Lemieux and what they already have on the roster. So you need depth. And I feel like first of all, I don't understand and don't really like the game day roster designation. If you're on a team, you're on a team. You got to have everybody ready to go. The owner's got the money to pay everybody a regular salary. Like, don't limit yourself with 46 on game day. That's where you have issues with depth in real time. So I like the fact that teams were trying to just stock up on offensive linemen, because that's where you have to be stacked as you try to get through a 17-game NFL season.
The 3 shallowest positions in this draft, again, courtesy of our buddy Fran Duffy's Twitter at Eagles XOs. There's usually 32, 33 receivers that get drafted. It was only 28 this year. Usually 25, 26 linebackers, 21 this year. Usually 21 safeties, 17 this year, Emory.
I think a lot of corners will end up at safety, and the teams probably viewed it that way in terms of how they're gonna break down that. Thank you. How they're gonna break down that position. Linebackers are unique. It's tricky, and it's a trend that we could probably see move forward. Or how many of these linebackers that got drafted are essentially, or how many defensive ends that got drafted are essentially linebackers? And so I feel like there's a blurring of the line in some cases with these guys, and with the focus being on coverage, people tend to de-emphasize the linebacker position. But when you have a great one or a really good one, it's noticeable. And I feel like we're going to slowly get back to people realizing you need a good linebacker. The Philadelphia Eagles realized that. They went out and got Kaiser White. They went out and got Reddick. And they also drafted Nakobe Dean. So you had, and we saw last year how it felt like the Eagles was out there with a front 4 and a secondary, and no one at the second level. So it's noticeable when you don't have adequate linebacker play, or even there's adequate or very good or great linebacker play. And when you do, it's a noticeable difference on defense. So I feel like we'll see that number slowly start to trickle back up.
Really looking forward to next week when we start to dive in division by division and get your breakdown of each, because there's a lot of team-specific questions I want to dive into with you for sure. Make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to this show, however you listen to podcasts, or youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, so you don't miss it. Check him out, of course, at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube. We are youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. And then footballgameplan.com/2022 draft guide. If you want to know more about your team's undrafted free agents, or just a lot of these guys, young guys on the rosters all around the NFL. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We are all tapped out.
Thanks for listening to the College Draft Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Fantasy Feast, Even Money, and The Business of Sports. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9 with it. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.